Alright, so burn on sight, bad anime. I'm gonna start things off with Neo Ranga. Anyone here heard of Neo Ranga? Only a few, alright. Well, this is an odd little show with these 10-minute episodes. Now, it had a pretty good pitch. You start with Neo Ranga, it's a giant monster show here, and you have these three sisters, and it's basically seeking them, and you let that sucker loose on Tokyo and watch the carnage. Now, that kind of sounds like fun, right? Everyone likes a monster movie. So, solid premise. I like monster movies. He's seeking these sisters. That's kind of interesting. You want to know what's going to happen next. It doesn't hurt that the art's pretty good, the characters look decent, the monster's pretty cool, but it's the mechanical details in the show that really stand out. Someone put a lot of time into making robots and stuff look pretty good. You put all these elements together and it can look downright amazing. You're like, yeah, that's movie grade right there. So what kind of flavor is the show going to be? Is it going to be like a monster movie thing, the tense political drama of Japan trying to deal with this, the sisters trying to figure out what they're going to do with this giant thing that's chasing them? Or maybe, what's going to happen to Japan's society by having a giant robot monster move in or whatever? Well, you don't really get a chance to find out because then the roof falls in on the whole thing. I kind of figured that the director was like, you know what? I've accomplished my life's goal. I've made the monster movie I always wanted. And this little guy was like, sir, we have another 20 episodes, sir. He's like, are you kidding me? 20? No, look, just deal with it. Oh yeah, I took all the budget too. Good luck with that. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I don't know if that's true, but it's the best explanation I can come up with what happened to the rest of the show. The first and most obvious effect is this. The quality just falls right down. These awful potato-headed people, skirts, ugly sight gags everywhere. What is even going on in this show? Ranga, the cool monster, starts looking like this. Now he gets these creepy eyes whenever one of the girls is controlling him. I mean, it just looks like garbage. Are those breast pleasers? I don't even know what's going on. Then there's the mechanical designs, which are the saddest because they used to be so good. Just look at that poor thing. When you compare them side by side, it's even worse. You're literally 2D. There's no definition there at all. And then, of course, the saddest is when you compare the awesome mechanical designs like this to this thing. This thing looks like a third grader's popsicle stick diorama. Things are not improved when they decided they were going to change the animation studio near the end of the show and go out with a bang. Except, what if they picked a really bad studio? I don't know. Oh yeah, that's much better. Things start looking really strange, whiplashing between this hyper-realistic detail and really unsettling-looking animation and drawings that look a little better than a child's crayon scribblings. Characters often look like caricatures of themselves. Or waxy, unsettling things like this. Oh, make it stop. Make it stop. What is that? Yeah, so maybe that wasn't the best plan. They switched back shortly afterwards. Now on to the next problem. This show cannot keep a consistent tone to save its life. Things are always all over the place. You're always asking what kind of show it's going to be. Well, maybe it's this kind of violent monster show. But then they show all the guys always jumping into tanks so no one ever gets killed. Alright? Well, maybe it's a comedy then. Okay, maybe there's a bunch of islanders with their limbs blown off. Maybe it's not a comedy? Alright, tense drama thriller. I can do that. No, wait, fan service. I can do that too. Alright, Monster of the Week. Okay. No, wait, it's a politics show. Fall asleep here. Alright, no, wait, mystical secret organizations. Human condition stuff? And the slippery slope towards a police state, everyone. And now it's sci-fi? I don't even know anymore. I have no idea what the show is trying to be. So everybody asked you what kind of show is going to be? It's all of them. It's everything you can possibly imagine dumped into the show all at once. If you're saying to yourself, but it's only got 10-minute episodes, how can they possibly try to keep it all straight? They can. I will demonstrate. So, to start things off, we've got Ranga and the sisters who live in Tokyo. Yuhi, the youngest, goes to this school here and is taught by Mr. Fujiwara. Ushio spends most of the show around town, making friends and, thanks to Ranga, some enemies. Minami, the eldest, is the only working member of the family. She has a lot of debt for failed business, Starhold, and covers it by working as a call girl. She's got rivals around town, and her rivals have their own dreams, including hiring others to spy on Ranga. The girls are otherwise alone, with no parents and their brother Masaru missing, who they're all still kind of trying to find. Now there's the army. Now they oppose Ranga, but they're largely ineffective, as you might imagine, which is why Big Ace, a secret mech program, is started. and staffed, including a whole bunch of people from around town, just making this even more complicated. Various government figures exert control over the mech team, including the Kyoshinkai, a shadowy group that wants to control the government. It is led by Fujiwara, the teacher. They've got their fingers all over the place, and the web just gets larger from there. It even starts to involve the Yakuza. Their own interests. Fortunately, the sisters have their own allies to help them, including Labere, a girl from the island Ranga came from. And they all have their own subplots. As we start moving into the second season, so it looks like they just decided to end the whole thing on a cliffhanger. I mean, this is literally the last frame of season 1. Finally, we're gonna get some mecha punch-ups going on. And then they cut to credits, right before the fight starts. I also cannot believe that. They get another 24 episodes of this garbage. And of course, there's no budget. So as I was saying, yes, of course. So now the United States gets involved. Sending spies freaking all over the place. The Kyoshinkai start to move faster and getting more organizations going. They're also working to capture Labere, who has strange powers they can use. And another villain, Nayelu, shows up to pull the strings on the Kyoshinkai, who are pulling the strings on the government. And that probably seems complicated enough to you. That's why this is when the aliens show up. Yes, aliens. So there's this space god named Tao, who hates Ranga because Ranga can control time or something, I don't know. Tao's agents on Earth are the Curiotes, and it turns out that Masaru, the girl's brother, is alive, and also the Curiotes, as is Nayelu, the other villain. Now, just look at all of that. If you're wondering how the show managed to keep on track with only 10-minute episodes, it doesn't. You've got all this to keep track of. Even they have no idea what they're talking about. This is a scan of the DVD inserts that came with my copy, to try to get you to figure out what's going on. So what gets dropped with all this nonsense? Well, character development, a lot of smaller plot points, and any coherency at all. Let's look at the character development of the three sisters. So we've got Yuhi, the youngest, who's 13, and basically just wants to use Ranga to beat everyone up and show how awesome she is. Now, they're all supposed to be showing development through the show, but by episode 5, she's kind of ordering Ranga to murder some children that are nearby. And by episode 46, she's getting ready to fight the whole government of Japan. So she shows no development at all. Then there's Ushio, the 15-year-old. She wants to fight for justice and what's right, but she never thinks her actions through and always destroys half the town. So here she is in episode 5, ordering Ranga to take out like a guy who just blew a stoplight and ends up blowing a building in the process. On the right, she ends up causing a three-way international incident. So she doesn't get any better either. Then there's the oldest sister. She wants to use Ranga to make money. She is all about the dollars. She's shown here stealing someone's milk off the ground. In episode 5, she's using a press briefing as an opportunity to plug her failing business. On the right, she's selling out Ranga to use in a Christmas party. None of the sisters ever develop or change, although the show's narrator constantly tells us that they are developing. Then there's all these other forgotten plot points. Like in episode 8, the girls all get these fancy devices. They are never used, referenced, or seen again in any episode on any sister, nor do they have any known purpose. Then this whole thing of the king. Many characters state that Ranga is going to choose one, and only one, of the girls to be king. It's heavily implied he's going to do this by killing the other two sisters. Now this is a pretty big plot concept that can surely add something interesting to the show. Fortunately for the sisters, after episode 23, this idea never comes up again. But my favorite example is the improved art used only in episodes 41 and 42. This character here shows up without any explanation or name. She appears in a lot of shots, always with the military, but she never has any relevance to the plot at all, and has only a single speaking line shown here. My pet theory is that the alternate art studio they hired drew her in accidentally, and they just kept her in because they had no idea what else to do with her. But anyway, as an example of how bizarre things can get in terms of tone in the show, in one story, we have a bank robbery, helicopter assassins out of nowhere, dramatic self-sacrifice into a sleeting hail of bullets, and Fujiwara explained the concept of embezzlement to children using characters from a popular children's television show. You may be saying, what? Oh, it's so confusing. And so, he explains vote buying, kickbacks, bank fraud, graft, and the effects of the economic bubble bursting to children using puppets. We sit here and watch. In the very next episode, by contrast, there are Yakuza suicide car bombings, intense violence, and graphic mortal endangerment of the main characters. These sorts of roller coaster shifts are commonplace in Neo Ranga. Let's look at a 2-episode pair in detail. So we start with a man about to be crushed to death by Ranga. Crushed by losing in a game show, that is. Yes, Ranga is everywhere on television, and the tone of the episode is zany. Fujiwara, the bad guy, has a devious plan involving umbrella performers for his sinister umbrella neck thing. It's hard to even describe how lame it was watching this happen. Why do you even have an ancient god with a giant built-in umbrella? But anyway, Ranga has a plan. He takes that umbrella and bounces that guy around and just, aw, shucks. Everyone makes it out, a good laugh is had by all, and you can almost see the Looney Tunes circle closing at the end of this ridiculous episode. In the very next episode, still at the same place with the failed umbrella mech lying there, Fujiwara offers this desperate actress the chance to become a hero by piloting the damaged mech. He has his own plans for how things are going to go down. He wants to have her die in combat with Ranga because he picked her because she used to work for the oldest sister. And he's trying to hope that by having her killed, it will change people's public perception of Ranga and make him out to be sort of a bad guy. So that's kind of a big tone shift for one episode. But, it's the perfect lead-in to talk about this guy. He is indisputably the villain for the vast majority of the show. His plan is to use ancient gods called Kyoshin, like this hideous thing here, to fight Ranga in order to change public perception and instill new morals into Japan. He's nice to the girls in person, always hanging out or offering his car, but he's really playing them. And by the end of season 1, they kind of figure out what the deal is as he chases them out of Japan, stabs them in the back to start his program of change society by demonizing Ranga, and they flee to Ranga's island. He then promptly sends assassins to kill everyone there and burn down the village, including tons of innocent villagers, and the girls are strung up to be executed in front of everyone. So he's kind of evil. Now, through an incredibly unlikely series of events, they escape this and return to Japan. So now they must have learned their lesson, right? Don't trust this guy, he's evil. Why are you having dinner with him? What are you doing? He tried to have you killed. And you're just like sort of angry about it? Oh, you can't stay angry at a guy with a face like that. Like, do you remember this episode with the umbrella god mech thing? He was in the back watching the whole time, of course, and when his mech ends up finally losing, like, the girls come up to him and they have him take him out for dinner after he loses. Like, this isn't like he's the leader of Team Rocket, people. Like, in the very next episode, they confront him about getting that pink-haired girl to pilot the thing to her death. Like, they know he's evil, they just never let it get to them, I guess? And it's so obvious he's evil. He takes over Japan's government and military coup, orders politicians killed in cold blood in their bed, and he pulls the most stereotypical plan ever and tries to ruin Christmas. Now, while it makes for an unbelievably silly-looking fight with, Father Christmas Ranga there fighting some kind of plant god, he does actually end up succeeding. The Japanese decide to never celebrate Christmas again, and it is ruined. In addition to being another good example of the sudden tone shifts in the show, it's also clear that Fujiwara is the bad guy. And it's inexplicable that the girls continue to quasi-trust him throughout the entire show. Their trust is never rewarded and almost always punished. He's also a pervert. I forgot to mention that somehow. It's clear that Fujiwara is very attracted to Yuhi, the 13-year-old, as he's always getting her gifts, including some quite inappropriate ones. Now, the show kind of plays it for laughs and kind of shows Yuhi as being in control of the situation, but that doesn't make it any less creepy. As a reminder, she's 13. As another example, because Fujiwara, like one day the toilet isn't flushing for Yuhi, because Fujiwara uses control over the government to shut off power and water to their house, because, as a reminder, he's evil. Once she can't flush, she gets really excited and gets ready to go in there and see what happens. Like, what is wrong with you two? This kind of highlights a larger problem about the show. Like, it's about these 3 female main characters with a god at their disposal, and women are constantly being degraded in the show. Nothing good ever happens. And I don't mean like standard fan service stuff like you're kind of used to. Let's take all the girls in order. Now, Minami, as I already mentioned, is a call girl. Now, she's not an outright prostitute, but it's not really exactly empowering or anything. Then there's Ushio. Now, here she is in the first season, in a watermelon eating contest with her friends from school. Looks pretty normal, right? Well, later on, he joins an anti-Ranga youth movement, and Ushio tries to come and talk to him about it. Well, that gets ugly in a real hurry. Like, apparently he's so taken with their mission, he's going to assault some morals and values right into her. Now, this comes out of absolutely nowhere, and is never mentioned again by any character. Then there's the girl's brother. Now, it's hinted on early on that Minami, in particular, is very in love with her brother, who has long been missing. So when he finally does show up, and is initially unconscious, they put him into bed and wait for him to recover. So how do they all feel about him? Well, Yuhi here just cuddles right on up to him. Ushio decides to inspect him, I guess. and Minami dresses up in her old high school schoolgirl outfit to do something. In all three cases, they're caught by Labare in their brother's room, so nothing really happens, and they're all told to keep quiet about their sexual desires. What is wrong with the show's attitude towards women, you might be asking? Are there no role models to be found? Well, there's Nayelu, I guess. One of the principal villains, and one of the only women in the show that seems to be in control. She's deadly, she's cunning, manipulative, clever. Even Fujiwara can't guess her true intentions. Finally, you're probably saying, here's a woman that follows her own agenda. No, of course her whole plan was just on behalf of some guy who she's totally submissive to. She stops being a character and starts being part of his outfit, as she's constantly draped over. And yet somehow, the show's quite popular. It's fondly looked upon and remembered. Why is that? Well, it's probably due to the visuals and the theme song, which are pretty decent. Now this right here, is what I feel most people remember about Neo Ranga. And indeed, if the show was about a trio of vengeful island goddesses and their crazy weapons on some kind of rampage, using powerful ancient magics and walking slowly away from explosions and so on, well, that's at least a concept I can see getting excited about. But it's just window dressing. Like, the DVD menus are so much worse. It's pretty much just the sisters and nothing but body paint. It's a pretty brazen marketing ploy, but it certainly seems like it worked. Yes, the supple body of a 13-year-old in your box is apparently enough for many people to have a positive feeling about the show that, I must stress, looks like this most of the time. Anyway, remember that girl I was talking about before, the one that got told to keep the family's ancestral desires secret? Labare here is the perfect example to unify all the points I'm making about the show. As the final segment of my panel, let's follow her through the course of it. So, her role. You're not really sure what they want to do with her. She shows up out of nowhere in episode 9, so she's not even part of the core cast from the good part of the show. And, is she there for fan service? No one that has one of those teeth is a serious character. It's one of the rules of anime, right? And maybe she's there to add some kind of mystical element? Maybe it's both at the same time. I just kind of figured that this guy wanted something that looked sort of like the opener of the show. Now, it's chart time. The show's creators didn't really know what they wanted to do with her, because she has some of the lowest screen time of the important secondary cast, being only a third of the show, and probably has less than 20 speaking lines during all 48 episodes. She's either being cute or weird in the background of various shows, or performing immensely powerful rituals. Basically, she's a plot device that is dragged out when the plot needs her, and forgotten otherwise. She's also constantly being captured. Like, dude, how can you even be taken seriously with that? Anyway, Labare ends up being forced to pilot Kyoshin for a while, and although Ranga defeats this one, they quickly find another one, the ugly thing from before. This time, though, Yuhi shows up, but she's immediately surrounded by tons of Kyoshinkai dudes. Now, I can't stress what happens next enough. We cut away to some other scene, and when we return from this scene here, Yuhi is somehow in the Kyoshin, pushes Nayelu, who as a reminder is a strong, deadly, immortal villain with the power to summon a god, out of it, and takes the thing out for a spin to escape with Labare inside. How in the world did that happen? After the rescue, Labare is given some care by Yuhi and begins to be sort of healed by the trauma she's undergone. Combining what the underage nudity on display here with what we know about Fujiwara's preferences, I'm starting to think the show is aiming for a somewhat undesirable demographic. Yeah, what am I bet it's this guy's fault. I bet it's this guy's fault. Yeah, I'm a little sick now too. Then nothing of consequence happens for most of the second season after this point. But do you remember when I had their brother showed up? It turns out he isn't their brother. He just looks exactly like him. Because for ham-fisted, contrived reasons, we needed a whole episode of the girls fleeing themselves in his sleeping body. He's actually some kind of minor god and just does whatever he wants, including stealing candy from children. Subtlety is not the show's strong point. His desires have become increasingly hard to sate, though, as he's always eating and food is slowing him down less and less. They're worried about this because he popped out of Ranga's eyeball one day, and they absolutely have to stop him from getting back into it. I'm not even going to bother trying to explain that nonsense, so take my word for it. Uh-oh, so they decide to have Labare comfort him? No. What are you doing? No. So apparently, the sisters decide that this is the best way to calm the minor god down, and no one but Yuhi, not even Ushio, the one who's supposed to be on the side of justice and righteousness, does anything in opposition to this plan. Case in point, when Yuhi tries to get Labare away from him, everyone tries to hold her back from doing it. Why? Because she's been through enough as it is. Yes, this is a good reward for all the nonsense she's gone through. Thank you, show. Anyway, she does eventually escape from her comfort role, and everyone's getting together as the final showdown gets going of the show. For the first time, the library shows some initiative of her own and jumps into the ocean to go do something important. Meanwhile, the sisters all get Neo Ranga and go fight the final boss. I'm not going to go into the details, it's everything you'd expect from a final battle. Eventually, they beat that guy up, and Yuhi has a big plan. She's going to go into space and use their power to fight some kind of space god. Because why not? Great character development there. Still wants to fight everything. But Ushio is ready to drop a bombshell on them. It turns out that library has been badly injured by acting as a medium to allow Ranga to fight, protecting the sisters and Ranga from injury at great personal cost. But it's not like anyone could have known this is where she was going when she jumped into the ocean, right? Oh, no wait. Ushio knew the whole time because library's been bleeding on her ever since Ushio first got into Ranga. But she keeps quiet and doesn't tell her sisters about it. And why do you let her get so injured? To prove a point to her other sister about why they shouldn't be fighting. And so everyone learns a valuable lesson, which is that Ushio is a monster, and all three girls have a nice, happy ending. A happiness built on the almost uninterrupted suffering of poor Libre. In fact, here she is about a decade later, being used up by the sisters. She's now permanently crippled. That's her in the wheelchair. And right there, we cut to credits. Great show, everyone. Good work. In conclusion, if I were to boil down the message that the show has, it would be this. Don't be a woman. If for some reason that proves impossible for you, at least make sure you never try and help anyone, since you will be taken advantage of. So remember, everyone, keep it real. Don't watch Neo Ranga.